Shavua Tov. We are now in perek Yud Zayin. I'm going to do a recap since a couple of you called me and asked me to do a recap because it was a very difficult chapter that we did last week, 16. So I'll do a quick recap. I'm not going to go into everything and all the little details that we learned, but I will hopefully give a nice overview of what we learned, Be'ezrat Hashem. So we ended last week with the idea that Eliyahu Hanavi seems to be both mythical, magical, and everywhere. And at the same time, he's a human being who lives in the time of Achav, and he kind of came out of nowhere. That's the beginning of the perek. He just came into our lives without any recognition, without any knowledge about him beforehand. And what I didn't do then and I'll do now, what does his name mean? Eliyahu, Eliyahu, my God. That's what it means. And really that's what Eliyahu is all about. He's the man of God in many, many ways. Like Moshe Rabbeinu, obviously in a different way, Eliyahu. So in the days, we are talking about the reign of Achav. Achav, the son of Omri, is a terrible, terrible king. He's married to Izebel, who is a daughter, a princess of Haba'al, and they're totally turning Am Yisrael, B'mamlechet Yisrael, into Ovdei Avodah Zarah. So he lives in the days of Achav, and he supports this worship of Baal and other gods as well. And in this specific crucial time in the history of Am Yisrael, of Mamlechet Yisrael, it looks as if Hashem is being eliminated from Am Yisrael. You don't hear him. The truth is, when was the last time we heard of Hashem in Mamlechet Yisrael? Right now, if you remember, we're in Mamlechet Yehuda. We have a wonderful king, Asa, who is doing everything he can to preserve Hashem's name, to preserve Yahadut. But in Mamlechet Yisrael, there's nothing. When was the last time you heard, ever since Yerovam ben Nevat, you heard anything Jewish, quote unquote, happening in Eretz Yisrael, in Mamlechet Yisrael? So it looks like Hashem is being completely eliminated in this northern kingdom. And this was because of Omri and the kings beforehand, and now Achav. And even more prominently, Izebel, his wife, who is controlling everything. So let's just think of historically what's happening. I mean, if we think of what's going on in America now, what's going on in Great Britain now, in England, what's going on in Australia, what's going on in Europe. So we have an idea because we have news, we have Ynet, we have the Jerusalem Post, we have the New York, we have pictures taken so we can see what's going on. Let's try to take a mental picture of what's happening now in this northern border in Mamlechet Yisrael. Chaos. There's no God of Israel. There's no Yahadut. Mitzvot, Torah is there's nothing there. And there comes Eliyahu, an individual, and he sees what's going on, and he's crying. He's saying, this is what's happening, right? This land is swarmed with priests of other worships of Baal and glorifying other powers and everything, and hundreds of thousands of Israelites of Bnei Yisrael are bowing down and kissing the hands of the Baal, and it's the sights. Think of what's really happening in Mamlechet Yisrael versus Mamlechet Yehuda, where what he tried to do, the king of Asa, he tried to eradicate all the Baal. He tried the best he can, but at least he's trying. At least Am Yisrael exists there. Torah Yisrael exists, but in Mamlechet Yehuda, nothing. So Eliyahu Navi maybe is trying to wake everybody up by showing all of these Nevi'ei Baal, all of these idol worshippers, who Hashem is. The strength of Hashem is more powerful than the Baal. You see, what we don't understand today is that then there was competition between gods. There really was. Which God is the most? It started made Avram Avinu. If you all remember the famous midrash of Avram smashing all the idols of Terach, his father. It didn't stop. You know, in the northern border, there's all these other gods, and there's a competition. Which God is the most powerful God? Which God is not the real God, because there are many gods, but which one is the most powerful? So maybe Eliyahu Navi thinking, what can I do to turn around things, to turn things up, to bring back Torah Yisrael? So he decides, and we saw this in the beginning of the perek, to punish Am Yisrael because he knows Torah. He knows Kriyat Shema. So he decides to show the strength of Hashem by punishing everyone. And that's what he did. And there's a drought. There's a famine, a ra'av. It turns out to be a ra'av because there's a drought. But what we asked is who commanded Eliyahu Hanavi to protect God? God didn't ask him. Hashem didn't say, I need help. He didn't say I need help. And because he didn't say I need help, we asked who said Eliyahu to go ahead and punish. It doesn't come from Hashem. There's no pasuk that says, I thou command you to now bring a punishment within the people. Maybe Am Yisrael, when I say Am Yisrael, I'm talking about Mamlechet Yisrael. Maybe they felt that Hashem was gone. Maybe they felt we don't see the presence of Hashem anywhere. We just see Baal. Let's think of the regular individual, the regular Ruvain, the regular Shimon, who is living in Mamlechet Yisrael, trying to be a good person, trying to do what he can, and he looks around and he sees nothing to do with Judaism. He doesn't see Torah being taught. He doesn't see, where's all those Arei Levim? Well, we know where the Arei Levim were. We saw that with Baasha, fighting in the Arim of the Levim. There is no Torah. So they wake up and they say, there's nothing. Where is our God? Where is Hashem? He's not here. Maybe the Baal took over. So Eliyahu, he can't stand that. He can't stand it. He has to do something. This is who Eliyahu Hanavi is. Eliyahu. It's my God. I have to do something. I need to protect Hashem. But who asked them to punish them with a drought? Doesn't say anywhere that Hashem says that. Yes, it's true. Someone brought the Yerushalmi and other sources and Kriyat Shema, but that comes from Hashem. It doesn't come from people executing the punishment for Hashem. It has to come from Hashem. Who gave Eliyahu the permission to punish Am Yisrael at all? Although Eliyahu does say that it comes from Hashem, but we don't see that in the psukim. We don't know that Hashem actually tells Eliyahu to do this, and that is why I use the words in perek that we saw. I use when he says to Eliyahu, "Lech mizeh, kum lech, go from here." And we didn't understand why. Why is Hashem reacting to Eliyahu Hanavi this way? Well, after we analyzed it, it made sense because Hashem didn't ask Eliyahu, and now Hashem wants to take care of Eliyahu. So, Eliyahu, I need to teach you something. You're missing something. Yes, you're a wonderful Kana'i. You love me, and I'm grateful for that. But I need to teach you how to be a manhig. I need to teach you how to be a prophet for Am Yisrael. And there's 3 stories that we went through, right? This drought that Eliyahu Hanavi just brought by himself because he's powerful, he's magical. He brings this drought, a great threat to the northern kingdom of Israel. It's the source of everything, food, right? We saw what happened in the parshiot that we just read, Parashat, starting Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash, Vayichi. We saw what happens when there's a ra'av. People have to leave their land, have to leave their homes because there's no food. So it's a threat to the northern kingdom. And Achav wants to get back at Eliyahu. He wants to how dare you give us this punishment, this magical character? Again, Hashem is not even there because nobody knows that it's coming from Hashem. He just says, Dvar Hashem Elai. And what happens? Achav, well, Eliyahu Navi's life is in danger. And Hashem, who loves Eliyahu, wants to take care of him. So he sends him to Nachal Krit for his own safety. So Eliyahu escapes to Nachal Krit for his protection. But we also discussed that Hashem is training Eliyahu Hanavi to trust that Hashem could look out for himself. That Hashem doesn't need Eliyahu to do the work for him unless he's asked to by Hashem. And he's told to go to this Nachal Krit, where there's a brook, a Nachal flowing with water, and that is how Eliyahu will be able to have water during this drought. The drought is there's no water. So he's going to have water through this Nachal. And it teaches and trains Eliyahu to be dependent on Hashem and not vice versa. Hashem doesn't need to be dependent on Eliyahu. Eliyahu needs to be dependent on Hashem. And then Hashem can take care of himself, but Eliyahu can't. So he comes to Nachal Krit, and we mentioned that Krit, we asked where this name comes from, Nachal Krit, and we don't even know where it is, but some Parshanim say it, I think this is very true. It comes from karet, cutting off. It's the Hebrew root of kaf reish taf, meaning to cut away. And it shows that Hashem is trying to maybe cut away with some of Eliyahu Navi's rigidness of kanaut. Kind of the sadnat chinuch that Shimon and Levi had to go through. And why was it that Yosef kept Shimon in our parsha last week, 2 weeks ago? Because he was trying to teach Shimon something. You know, you pushed me into the pit. I'm going to keep you here. It's me. So maybe Hashem is trying to teach Eliyahu Hanavi something during this period of drought that he concocted. He decided to bring by himself. And at the same time, the story also tells us that Eliyahu Hanavi accepted food from the raven, from the orvim, which are unpure animals. Right? These ravens are bringing bread and meat every day, every morning and every night. And Eliyahu is getting this food from these unpure animals, and he's learning. Eliyahu is learning to maybe put away all his, his ideas, his traditional ideas, masoret of what it means to be fed properly, and how to. Here Hashem is creating this miracle, but using unpure ravens to bring him food, emphasizing that there's the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law. And maybe one of the, and we're going to see now in a minute, as I recap the second two stories, we'll see that it means something, that ish kana'i is an ish emet, follows the truth until the end, but maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe, just maybe, Eliyahu Hanavi is not showing any mercy, something that Hashem believes in. So enters the second story. Now, we're going to combine all the stories in a minute, but the second story is the Nachal dries up, and now Hashem has to move Eliyahu to another place in order to make sure that he can survive, because again, there's still a drought that Eliyahu brought on himself. And Hashem shows Eliyahu that a widow, an almanah, would ensure that he is fed. Now, widows in Tanakh in general are notorious. They're known for their poverty, right? There's nobody to take care of them. They weren't the ones who were mefarnes, it was the husbands, and almanah doesn't have one. And sure enough, Hashem leads Eliyahu Navi to this poor, non-Jewish widow from Sidon. And the question we ask is, why? What is Hashem bringing Eliyahu? It's a very obscure story. You're bringing him to an almanah. What is Hashem trying to teach Eliyahu Hanavi? So Eliyahu sees that this non-Jewish woman is feeding him out of the goodness of her heart. She didn't know he was a prophet. She had no clue who he was, what level he's on. She just saw, an individual, and he asks for water, and she doesn't even flinch. And then he asks for bread, and it's harder for her. And she says to him, look, I don't even have enough for myself. But she never says no. And Eliyahu then says, there will be a miracle that will happen to you. And she goes and she gives him what she has. And she gives Eliyahu everything he wanted. This almanah who has nothing. She's very poor. And we know that she's very poor because we mentioned that she didn't have enough money, or she didn't even have enough belongings to even have wood. There's only, she says two, it says there are two. She was gathering enough wood to light a fire. There's a lot of wood. There's no drought of wood. There's drought of, there's a lot of trees around. There's no food, but she didn't even have wood, which shows that she's really an ani. She's really somebody very, very poor. Yet she doesn't flinch and she helps Eliyahu immediately. She respects Hashem. That's what she says. Meaning, she's a good woman. Does she deserve this drought that Eliyahu put forward? Does she deserve this drought? She's doing the right thing. She's a good person. Maybe she needs direction. Maybe if somebody would say there's a God in this world, maybe if somebody would teach her, but a drought you punish immediately. There's another lesson that Hashem is teaching Eliyahu. How about Chazara b'tshuva? Give them a chance. That's not what Eliyahu, he comes out of nowhere in the beginning of the perek, and immediately this great punishment of a drought, which is a gzar din mavet for so many people. And Hashem is saying, but even non-Jews could be good. That's what Hashem is saying. This almanah, poor person, she's going to give you everything she has. Teaching Eliyahu, you're too quick. Your kanaut is getting ahead of you. Enters the third and last story that introduces Eliyahu Hanavi. Her son becomes sick. And as we would say, my high, what is this? Why? What is going on here? Eliyahu says, you first saved me from a drought by putting me in Nachal Krit. Okay, I understand. You're teaching me. I'm learning humility. And then you bring me to this almanah. I'm learning about trusting in Hashem and how people can trust in Hashem and can learn about Hashem. But why are you doing this to this poor woman's son? What did he ever do? So these happy days, for a couple of years that they were living together in this house, they turned into these really dark, shadowy, terrible days of sickness and death of this son. What is Hashem teaching Eliyahu through this story? What does Eliyahu do? He prays to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? That's where we ended it, right? He says, Hagam al ha'almana asher ani mitgorer ima hareota. What are you doing, Hashem? He prays with great kavanah. And he says, why are you doing this? Bring him back. Sure enough, Hashem listens to Eliyahu. Eliyahu is so close to Hashem. And the son comes back to life. So we see that Eliyahu and Hashem are very, very tight, very, very close. But also another lesson for Eliyahu to learn. Maybe you should have given people a chance to do tshuva. Did Eliyahu Hanavi learn his lesson? Does he now understand mercy? You finally realize that this woman, this poor woman who is a good person, why does she deserve this drought? Look what happened to her son because of it. You now prayed for her son to come back, and I gave you what you wanted because that's mercy. Maybe you should have chosen a different way of teaching Am Yisrael about me, about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Eliyahu is very powerful. And after everything Achav has done and Izebel has done, turning Am Yisrael away from Hashem, we need Eliyahu trained to be the Navi that we deserve. But Hashem wants them to do tshuva his own way. That's what's happening in the last perek. And now we can understand the next perek, which is a competition of Nevi'im in Har HaKarmel. So we're going to start the new perek Yudchet Pasuk Aleph. Vahi Yamim Rabim Udvar Adonai Haya El Eliyahu Bashana Shlishit Leimor Lech Heira'e El Achav Ve'etena Matar Al Pnei Ha'adama Vayelech Eliyahu Leheira'ot El Achav Ve'ahav Chazak B'Shomron. So after a long time, the third year of this drought, Hashem appears to Eliyahu Hanavi, which is in direct which is the exact opposite of how the previous perek started. If you remember, the previous perek that we just finished, Yud Zayin, started out where Eliyahu just appears and decides for himself. We don't hear of Hashem. Finally, perek Yud Chetz opens up with Zvar Hashem was to Eliyahu. So finally, we see a mature Eliyahu, one that waits to be commanded to by Hashem, one who waits to hear what Hashem has to say, one who understands that we don't need to do Hashem's work in this world. We need to do what we need to do, and we will fulfill our we will become messengers when Hashem wants us to be a messenger, and that is who Eliyahu has turned into. So we see this sidrat chinuch, this educational, this school that he went to, these three different stories, worked. He is a now more mature individual, a Navi that realizes and understands that he is a messenger. All Nevi'im are. So Hashem appears to Eliyahu and says, I want you to go, present yourself to Achav. Unlike last time when Eliyahu went to Achav by himself on his own encounter, now he's being commanded to, and I will send rain to the land. I will stop this drought. So Eliyahu, he goes, and he presents himself to Achav. And this famine, this ra'av, this drought is very, very severe in the Shomron. Only in the Shomron. What's happening in Yehuda? It doesn't say. But we can assume, because the Psukim say, the Arab Chazak b'Shomron, not so in Yerushalayim, in Mamlechet Yehuda. Because in Mamlechet Yehuda, maybe, again, we'll see a bit later on, maybe people who follow Torah mitzvot, they don't have Ira'ah. But we'll see a little bit later how that works out. Either way, all of a sudden, we stop. Think of this picture. Hashem commands Eliyahu, go to Achav, and Eliyahu's on the way. While he's on the way, while he's walking towards Achav, now don't forget, up until now, Eliyahu was in hiding. It's not very easy for him to just walk and go to Achav. But Hashem commanded him to. So he goes. During this time, Pasuk Gimel, ויקרא אחאב אל עובדיהו אשר על הבית, ועובדיהו היה ירא את אדוני מאוד. During this time, Achav summons Ovadiyahu. Ovadiyahu was, he was Ma'amin Ba'Hashem. We could just, it's a Midrash Shem, Ovadiyahu, Oved et Hashem. He was obviously a good Yid, even though he was in Mamlechet Yisrael. And he was also close to Achav. Interesting. Achav, one of Achav's closest ministers, was Dafka Ma'amin Ba'Hashem. We'll come to that later, why that means something. Either way, Achav summons Ovadiah to his palace, and what does he tell him? He tells him like this. Pasuk Dalet. Vahi be'achrit Izebel et nevi'ei Adonai. ויקח עובדיהו 100 נביאים, ויחביאם 50 איש במערה, וכלכלם לחם ומים. We're learning a little bit about this Ovadiah character. Ovadiah has taken 100 prophets and hidden them in caves, 50 in each cave. He supplied them with food and water, which means that Achav was surrounded by good people. Though he was married to Izebel, there were still good people who had power in Mamlechet Yisrael. Another message to Eliyahu. Eliyahu, you were so quick to punish them. Had you checked to see that there are good people you could have used, you could have lehashpia on them. Even in modern day, you try to get to the good people to be mashpia on those who are not as good. And Hashem is saying that is what you should have done. They're good people. Ovadyahu, I have somebody centered right next to Achav, and you didn't even use him. Look what he did. He did more for Am Yisrael than you did with the drought. Your drought did terrible things. You've killed people. People must have died in this drought. It's not just a drought to say, okay, there's no water. I'll go buy Mei Eden. There's no water. I'll go to get Neviot. No, there's no water. People die. And that's not just what's going on here. Izeved is systematically going and eradicating and killing people that are of the Hashem. Yet even through this, Ovadyahu is trying to save Nevi'ei Hashem, trying to save people that are Shomrei Torah Mitzvot, which means there were some Shomrei Torah Mitzvot in Mamlechet Yisrael. Why did they deserve to get this drought? Eliyahu was too quick. So now that we know who Ovadyahu is, what does Achav say to him? Pasuk Hey. Vayomer Achav el Ovadyahu, lech ba'aretz el kol ma'ayanei hamayim ve'el kol hanechalim. Ulai nimtza chatzir unechaye sus v'pared ve'lo nachrit mehabehima. So Achav says to Ovadyahu, go through the land to all the different springs and valleys, whatever is left of them. Maybe we can find some grass to keep the horses and mules alive, so we will not have to kill any of our animals. Who is he caring about? Animals? What about the people? Why is he not talking about the people of Israel? Does he care just about the animals? That's what the Psukim say. Meaning, systematically, with Izeva, they're going to kill all those who are Shomrei Torah Mitzvot, and Achav cares about his horses and his mules. What does he do? Pasuk Vav. Now we can realize who this Achav person is. Pasuk Vav, Vayichalku lahem et haaretz la'avor ba, Achav alach bederech echad levado, ve'Ovadyahu alach bederech echad levado. So they divide the land that they were going to cover. So we could see that Ovadyahu was very, very high up. If Achav divides the country into two, he takes one half and Ovadyahu takes the other half. It means that Ovadyahu, who is a good yid because he saved some of the Nevi'im, he saved those who are Shomrei Torah Mitzvot. And he's entrusted with half of the kingdom to go find and search, just like Achav. So he goes in one direction and Ovadyahu takes another direction. And this was the setting for what's about to come. Because we know the perek starts with Hashem saying, Eliyahu, I want you now to go to Achav so that we can finish this. Something that maybe should have happened one perek earlier, before the drought even started. Meaning, if we go back to perek Yud Zayin and put one big X on it, what did we lose? What would we have lost if we would just take out perek Yud Zayin from the Tanakh completely? What we would gain, there's no drought. What we would gain is maybe now it should have started, Hashem tells Eliyahu, go to Achav, and now start convincing people. Tell them who I am. Remind them of Torah Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. But of course, we'll see there's a bigger plan and everything. Every letter is important, and the Nevi'im didn't just waste space on our pages. There's a reason for everything. So let's picture what's going on here. Achav and Ovadyahu, they divide the country of Mamlechet Yisrael into two. Achav takes his people, and they're searching for, let's think what they're searching for. They're searching for other nechalim and water and grass to feed their animals. So sad, that's what he cares about. Either way, Ovadyahu is on his own with his people. And who does he meet? Dun, 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 Pasuk Zayin, Vayhi Ovadyahu baderech, והנה אליהו לקראתו, ויקירהו, ויפול על פניו, ויאמר, האתה זה אדוני אליהו? Obadiah's walking along, trying to do his search, and he meets Eliyahu. He recognizes him immediately. And he right away bows down to the ground, and he says, is it really you? Is it really you? My Lord, my Adoni, Eliyahu. What do you mean, is it really you? Of course, because everyone is searching for Eliyahu. Do you remember when he escaped? Well, he escaped for good reason, because Achav was after him because of this drought that he just punished everyone with. And we could only assume that everyone was looking for him. If Izebel commanded to kill all the Nevi'ei Hashem, well, he's one of them. So, of course, people were searching for him. He's the greatest of them all. So much that Obadiah recognizes immediately and says, Adoni Eliyahu. Yes, Eliyahu replies, Ken. Vayomer lo ani, lech emor la'adonecha, hinei Eliyahu. Yes, it's really me. Tell your master, Achav, I'm here. Obadiah doesn't know what to say. Vayomer, mechatati, ki ata noten et avdecha biyad Achav lahamiteni. Chai Adonai Elohecha, im yesh goy umamlacha asher lo shalach Adoni sham levakeshcha ve'amru ayin. והשביע את הממלכה ואת הגוי, כי לא ימצאך. ואתה, אתה אומר לי, לך אמור לאדונך, הנה אליהו. What have I done wrong to you, says Obadiah? You're asking me, a servant to Achav, to hand you over to him. He's going to surely put me to death. Why? Of course. Achav searched all over for you. He went to every nation around to search for you, and he made them swear that you're not around. And you just want me to go tell him that you're here? Because you know what's going to happen. Pasuk Yud Bet, this Obadiah he's a chacham. He says in Pasuk Yud Bet, V'haya ani elech meitach, v'ruach Adonai yis'acha al asher lo eda, ובאתי להגיד לאחיו ולא ימצאך, והרגני, ועבדך ירא את אדוני מנעורי. Obadiah says, I know it's going to happen. I'm going to go tell Achav that you're here, and then when I go with him to find you, I'm not going to find you. You're going to vanish again like you did before, because you know that he's trying to kill you. He knows he wants to get rid of you. Izebel is going to try to get you. So I'm putting my life in danger. Please don't send me. I am Yarei Hashem. I am an extremely Yarei Hashem. It's not about believing in Hashem. It's about fear. Achav is scary. He's going to kill me. Pasuk Yud Gimel, and he continues to explain this to Eliyahu. Halo yugad la'adoni et asher asiti בהרוג איזבל את נביאי אדוני, ואחביא מנביאי אדוני 100 איש, 50 איש במערה, ואכלכלם לחם ומים. Says, I don't know what's going to happen. If I leave and come back and you're not gone, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. But you know that it's not about Hashem. I am on your side. I believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Did you not hear what I did, saving all those people against the Malkah? Have you not heard what I did? Izebel was killing all these prophets. I hid a lot of them, 50 in this one, 50 in that one. And now you want to tell me to go to my master Achav and tell them that Eliyahu is going to be here? I'm afraid. Pasuk Tetvav, Vayomer Eliyahu, Chai Adonai Tzevaot, Asher Amadeti Lefanav, Ki Hayom Eira'eh Eilav. Calms him down and says, don't worry. Chai Hashem. This is all coming from Hashem that you believe in. He's poneh to Ovadiah and saying, look, you ended by saying you believe in Hashem. I trust that you believe in Hashem. This is from Hashem. So therefore, I will surely present myself to Achav today. This is a very, very powerful statement because this might also show us that we were right when we discussed the first pasuk in our last perek, when we mentioned that Eliyahu just came out of nowhere and decided by himself. Well, this Ovadiyahu must have also known that. Otherwise, Eliyahu wouldn't have had to run away. Because when Hashem wants something, Hashem will send his messengers and protect them right there in front of everybody. But Eliyahu Hanavi had to run away, which told Ovadiyahu, maybe this isn't from Hashem. Maybe this too is not from Hashem. And therefore, when I come back to get to bring Achav to you, you'll be gone. So the training worked, and Eliyahu says, no, I am here b'shlichut Hashem, Chai Hashem, and I'm not going anywhere. Bring Achav to me. Okay, pasuk tet zayin. Vayelech Ovadiyahu likrat Achav, vayagem lo. So Ovadiah goes to meet Achav, and he tells him, Vayelech Achav likrat Eliyahu. And Achav goes to meet Eliyahu. All is good. All the fear that Ovadiah had doesn't come to anything because it's all a tochnit of Hashem. Pasuk Yud Zayin. Vayihi kirot Achav et Eliyahu. Let's think what's going on in Achav's mind. He finally sees Eliyahu, the man who caused a drought, the man who must have killed because of the drought. People have died. And that is why it was so important for Hashem to teach Eliyahu mercy. You can't just go ahead and do these things. There are good people in this kingdom. But Eliyahu is still Eliyahu, and Hashem follows Eliyahu. Vayikirot Achav et Eliyahu, what is he thinking? Vayomer Achav elav, ha'ata ze ocher Yisrael. Is it you? Ocher Yisrael, you caused all of these troubles for us. He's mad. He's mad at the punishment, at the drought. So what does Eliyahu say? Vayomer lo acharti et Yisrael. I didn't cause this. This is not my doing. Ki im ata ubeit avicha. This is your doing, Achav. Finally, we're getting into a dialogue of emunah. It is you who caused this. Why? Be'ozevchem et mitzvot Adonai v'telech acharei ha'be'alim. Black and white. Finally, it's said verbally out in the air. He says to Achav, I have not made these troubles for Am Yisrael. It is you. You and your father's family. You have abandoned Hashem's Torah mitzvot, His commandments, and you have followed the Baal. Ve'ata, pasuk Yutet 19, Ve'ata shlach kvotz elai et kol Yisrael el har ha'karmel, ve'et nevi'ei ha'Baal 450, u'nevi'ei ha'asherah 400 ochlei shulchan Izavel. Summon the people of Israel to meet me on Har HaKarmel. Bring all of the 450 prophets of the Baal, and 450 prophets of Asherah, who eat at your wife's table, Izavel. Telling him, this is all you're doing. They're eating from your table. You caused this. Achav must have known. V'hayayim shamoa. He must have known about what happens when you leave Torah mitzvot. And Eliyahu is addressing that. He's saying, it's not me, it is you. Pasuk Kaf. Vayishlach Achav bechol bnei Yisrael, vayikvot et hanevi'im el har HaKarmel. Immediately Achav complies. He does exactly what Eliyahu wanted. But here's the question I would like to pose. Had Achav, would he have complied if there wasn't the drought? Maybe Achav is also fearing Eliyahu. Maybe what Eliyahu did ultimately worked to his advantage. Had Eliyahu not done anything, and he would have come to Achav with nothing in his hands, nothing to show for it, and just said, "You're doing something wrong," Achav could have said, "I'm doing nothing wrong. We're flourishing. Everything is working for us. I have a kingdom. I have a brit with Izebel and Sidon. We're doing well." So maybe Eliyahu does know something. It's not as simple as we thought. Because had there not been a punishment, maybe Achav wouldn't have complied so quickly. Maybe he wouldn't have brought these people to Har Carmel. But we have to see the rest of the story to see what's really going on here. So Achav goes, he sends word throughout the kingdom of Israel, and he assembles all the prophets, just like Eliyahu wanted, and he brings them all to Har Carmel. And then Pasuk Kaf Aleph, Vayigash Eliyahu el kol ha'am, Vayomer, Ad matai atem posechim al shtei haseifim im Adonai ha'Elohim lechu acharav, ve'im ha'Baal lechu acharav, ve'lo anu ha'am oto davar. So Eliyahu goes in front of all the people. It must have been a long time. To get everybody up to Har Carmel. I don't know if anybody, when was the last time you guys did a tiyul and walked up Har Carmel? It's beautiful. It really is gorgeous. But to bring all of Am Yisrael there must have taken a long time. I'm wondering what happened during this time. I don't know. I could only assume Eliyahu was planning out his strategies. Achav was planning out what he's going to do. This competition between Hashem and other gods, Baal and Asherah. Either way, they all get to Har Carmel. They're all there waiting. What's going to happen? And they all already are probably told ahead of time. There's a competition. Which God is the strongest God? Which, in a way, this is not new to us. We already have this way back in Yetziat Mitzrayim. We're starting Parashat Shmot this week. And in Parashat Shmot this week, we meet the same kind of thing. And Parashat Ve'era and Bo later on also is like, Mi Hashem asher eshma bekolo. Who is this God? I don't even know this God. So what's going on here? Eliyahu says to all these people, how long will you waver between these two opinions of which God to follow? If you want to follow Hashem, follow Hashem. If you want to follow the Baal. He's giving them a choice. Because emunah is based on choice. You cannot force somebody to be a mami. Which, by the way, an interesting thing came up today on Shabbat, at our Shabbat table. And, with school being only on Zoom, there's a problem with davening. When we were all kids and we used to go to school, the first thing we did in school is we daven, right? There's a minyan, or for girls, there's no minyan, they daven in the classroom or whatever. And now there's Zoom. So now everyone is davening on Zoom. And Zoom depends on what school. My kids start at about 8:15. If they wake up earlier and they want to eat, I'm very strict. I tell my kids, you want to eat, first you got to daven, and then you can eat. But my kids say to me, well, it's a problem because if we daven with our class, we don't have time to eat because immediately after davening, there's classes. But if we daven before and then eat, we have to appear in the Zoom, and then we have to daven again. So we pose this through the different media to some of my kids' friends. Like, what do you guys do? Are you also forced to daven first? And a lot of them, unfortunately, no. They just wake up at 8 o'clock and they kind of like daven while they wake up. And then one of my one of my girl's friends said, well, you can't force the yeshivas and ulpan, they can't force us to daven. And that's why, some of us don't daven. These girls especially thinking they don't have to daven. You can't force us to daven. That's what a lot of kids are saying today. You can't force us to daven, which is true. You can't force to daven. You could try to train them to daven. That's different than forcing them, forcing you to learn how to daven. But you can't force somebody to believe in God. You can't force somebody to open up their heart and believe in Hashem. And that's what Eliyahu is doing here. He's saying, I can't force you to follow Hashem, but I can give you a choice. Who do you want to follow? Do you want to follow Hashem? Do you want to, or do you want to follow the Baal? It's up for grabs. Let's see who's stronger, because that's what they understood. They understood might, power, strength. They'll follow the strongest God. They'll follow the God that can stop the drought, because that's a God to reckon with. So he gives them a choice. No problem. I'm not going to force you to follow Hashem, to all mitzvot. You want to, b'vakasha, go to the right. You don't want to, go to the left. We'll see what happens. And what does he say? Pasuk Kaf Bet, 22. ויאמר אליהו אל העם, אני נותרתי נביא לאדוני לבדי. ונביאי הבעל 450 איש. ויתנו לנו 2 פרים, ויבחרו להם הפר האחד, וינתחו וישימו על העצים, ואש לא ישימו. ואני אעשה את הפר האחד, ונתתי על העצים, ואש לא אשים. וקראתם בשם אלוהיכם, ואני אקרא בשם אדוני, והיה האלוהים אשר יענה באש, הוא האלוהים. ויען כל העם, ויאמרו, טוב הדבר. So what does Eliyahu Hanavi say to them? He says, look, I am truly the only prophet of Hashem, because he's ever killed them all. Besides the 100 that are stashed away in 2 caves, 50 in one, 50 in another. I'm the only one visible. I'm the only true Navi Hashem who's here, because Hashem wants me to be here. And then he says, get 2 bulls, right? Shnei parim. The Baal prophets, Nevi'eh HaBaal ve'Ashirah, they'll choose one for themselves. They're going to choose which bull they want. And I'll let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood as a mizbeach. The way we do shechita, cut them up, we put on the mizbeach as an olah. But don't set a fire to it. Prepare it, but don't light it up. I will do the same, says Eliyahu. I will prepare the other bull that you didn't choose, so it's all up to you. And I'll put it on the wood and also not set a fire to it. So we're all going to create an offering to our gods in order to stop the drought. Because let's remember, this is how our perek started. Pasuk Aleph said that Hashem appears to Eliyahu and tells him, go to Achav so that I can stop the rain, so I can stop the drought and give you rain. But for that to happen, you have to bring an offering, a tefillah to Hashem. Eizeshu avodah is a tefillah, but an olah to Hashem will help bring down rain. So he says, great, let's do competition. All of Am Yisrael, well, Mamlechet Yisrael are there in Har Carmel. Who is going to be the stronger God? Hashem or the Baal? And he's giving them all opportunity to win. He tells them, do what you want to do. You want to stand on the right, you want to stand on the left, you want to choose this bull, you want to choose that bull. No problem. Cut it up the way you want to cut it up. Do everything that you want to do that you think is good for you to have this offering so that Hashem may bring down rain. Don't light it. The light, the fire, will come from the Shamayim. Now, this is something they all know about, because I assume the stories of the Bible, the Tanakh, were very, very famous. If you remember, there was another account in the Midbar, right, with two brothers, Bnei Aaron HaKohen, who also were about to offer an offering to Hashem, and an and they krivu esh zara, and then fire from the heavens came down. So they know that it's possible. And that's what Eliyahu is proposing. We're going to bring down fire from the heavens. Whoever succeeds proves to be their God is the more mightier of gods. And everybody accepts. So they do this whole preparation. And then he says, then call out to your God. Call out to your God that you believe couldn't stop this drought. I will call to my HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the God who answers by fire is the God. Hu ha-Elohim. He must be, because he's the most powerful, which means if my God succeeds in defeating your God, it means that my God is more powerful, and that's the God to reckon with. Pasuk Kaf Hei. Anachnu b'metach. We're b'metach po. What's going to happen? Who's going to win? Wonder who's going to win. Pasuk Kaf Hei. Vayomer Eliyahu lenevi'ei Haba'al. בחרו לכם הפר האחד ועשו ראשונה. כי אתם הרבים. You go first. וקירו בשם אלוהיכם ואש לא תשימו. Right? After they all agreed, Eliyahu turns to the Nevi'ei Baal. He says, look, you choose first. You're many. I'm just the one. Call on the name of your God. Don't light the fire. So that's what they do. Pasuk Kafva, ויקחו את הפר אשר נתן להם, ויעשו, ויקראו בשם הבעל מהבוקר ועד הצהריים לאמור, הבעל עננו. ואין קול ואין עונה. ויפסחו על המזבח אשר עשה. They took the bull and they prepared it. Then, what do? They call on the name of the Baal from morning until noon. Baal, Baal, answer us, please. God of the Baal. They shout. No response whatsoever. No one answered. They danced around the altar and danced and danced. Nothing. Vayfasechu. They were dancing. Pasuk Kaf Zayin. ויהי בצהריים, noon came, ויהתל בהם אליהו, ויאמר, קראו בקול גדול, כי אלוהים הוא, כי שיח, וכי שיג לו, וכי דרך לו, אולי ישן, והוא יקץ. ויקראו בקול גדול, ויתגודדו כמשפטם בחרבות וברמחים. עד שפוך דם עליהם. ויהי כעבור הצהריים, ויתנבאו עד לעלות המנחה, ואין קול, ואין עונה, ואין קשב. So at noon, Eliyahu begins to taunt them, to goad them into it. Shout louder, he says. He can't hear you. Surely he's your God. Perhaps he's in a deep thought. Or maybe he's busy, or maybe he's traveling somewhere. He's not around. Call him back. He's in Tel Aviv. And they shout louder and louder. They slashed themselves with swords and spears and God knows what. That was their custom until their blood flowed, until they're shedding blood, trying to bring their God to bring them rain. Finally, Batzoraim comes midday. They continued this frantic prophecy of Nevi'ei Baal until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response, No one answered. No one paid any attention whatsoever. I could only imagine a picture of what's going on there, prancing around and dancing and yelling at their God, Baal, Baal. And there you have one Navi Hashem, Eliyahu, standing there. Pasuk Lamed, Vayomer Eliyahu lechol ha'am, gishu elai, vayigshu chol ha'am elav. That's it. Now it's my turn. וירפא את המזבח אדוני ההרוס. ויקח אליהו 12 אבנים כמספר שבטי בני יעקב, אשר היה דבר אדוני אליו לאמור, ישראל יהא שמך. Eliyahu says to all the people, come here. They came. He repairs the altar, the Mizbeach, which had been torn down. And Eliyahu takes 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Yaakov Avinu. And he says, your name shall be Yisrael. Ki sarita im Elokim vatuchal. What a message of Achdut. Saying now is the time. You saw the Baal is empty. There isn't anything there. The only way Hashem will be with us, the only way is if we are all together, be'achdut, 12 shvatim yachad. That's very, very important, because we are in the biggest rift of our history, Mamlechet Yisrael, Mamlechet Yehuda. What does he do? Pasuk Lamed Bet, vayivne et ha'avanim mizbeach b'shem Adonai, vayas te'ala keveit tzatayim zera saviv lamizbeach, ויערוך את העצים, וינתח את הפר, וישם על העצים. So with the stones that he just builds an altar in the name of Hashem. He digs a trench around it, large enough to hold the zraim. He arranges the wood. Then what does he do? He cuts up the bull, like he said to the Nevei Baal to do, into pieces. He lays them down. Then he arranges the wood. Then he says to them, Pasuk Lamed Gimel, as we mentioned, Mil'u arba'a kadim mayim, veyitzku al ha'ola ve'al ha'etzim, vayomer shenu, vayishnu, vayomer shaleshu. This is getting a little bit more complicated. We're going to have to deal with this, of what he's doing exactly here, but I'm just going to go through it really quickly so we can finish before our time ends. He says to them, fill your large jars with water, pour it on the offering and on the wood. Then he says, do it again. And they did it again, a third time, etc. He orders them to do it a third time, and they do it a third time. The water ran down around the Mizbeach and even filled the trenches. And at that time, Pasuk Lamed Vav, Vayhi be'alot hamincha, Vayigash Eliyahu hanavi, Vayomar. And then he finally, when he's ready, he steps forward, then he prays, and he says, Adonai Elohei Avraham, Yitzchak veYisrael, Hayom Yivada, Ki Ata Elohim beYisrael, Va'ani Avdecha, Uvidvarecha Asiti et Kol Hadevarim Ha'ele. What I wouldn't give to have that today. If we could have somebody in today's day and age prove to the world Hashem exists, prove to the world Am Yisrael is Am Hashem, Eretz Yisrael belongs to us. Rabotai, Vigvirotai, Morai Verabotai, what we're witnessing here is something that we crave, to prove to the world that Hashem exists. This is huge. What Eliyahu is doing here He's going to prove to the world that Hashem exists. Does he succeed? Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait until next week. Does he succeed in proving to the world, at least to Mamlechet Yisrael, at least to Achav and Yisrael, at least to the Nevi'ah, Baal and Ba'ashirah, does he succeed in proving that Hashem Hu HaElokim? We say that on Yom Kippur 7 times, Hashem Hu HaElokim. And when we say it with all of our kavanah, we believe it. Well, we're going to wait until next week to see if he succeeds in his mission. Be'ezrat Hashem. Shavua Tov.